Hello, friends, and welcome to episode number 113 of Nostalgia Talk. I'm James, and I am very excited to be joined here today by Cynthia Preston.
Hello.
Hello to you. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I am very well as well. And as I said, very excited to be talking to you. For anybody who doesn't know, Cynthia is an actress who has appeared on camera on General Hospital, The X-Files, Two and a Half Men, and a bunch of other TV shows and Lifetime projects, and also in the movie Whale Music. And you might know her best as the voice of Princess Zelda in the animated Legend of Zelda TV series from the 1980s.
Yes, that was great fun.
It's funny, I announced this and a lot of my friends were like, oh my god, Princess Zelda. And I was like, okay, let me be a little bit more specific on that. So many of them thought you were Zelda in the video games.
Right. No, this specifically is in the cartoon.
Yeah, exactly. So to start things off, how did you become interested in acting, like in acting in general?
I fell into it, actually. I was an extremely shy kid, and my mom sent me to a self-improvement course because she said, you're not better than anybody else, but you're not worse than anybody else. I was just really afraid of people or something. I don't know. And so she sent me to this self-improvement course that turned out to be a slash modeling course. We didn't really know that at the time, but some of the modeling agents came down and looked at the girls upon graduation, and I got an offer of representation from a modeling agent. And so even though I was really shy, I had a really good work ethic. I was working at the drugstore, the checkout counter from 15, and so I just started modeling in Toronto and doing, Love's Baby Soft ads and Sears ads and things like that. And then I got scouted by agents in Japan. And when I was 18, I went over to Japan for a 2-month contract, and then I loved it. So I went back for a 4-month contract. So that was 6 months in Japan.
Wow.
And back from that, I said, okay, well, I've made some money for university. So I'm finished modeling. Thank you so much. Have a nice life. And the modeling agent said, well, I'd like you to meet our talent rep. This is David Karnick. And I said, very nice to meet you, but I'm sorry, I won't be working with you. And he said, fine and dandy. And I guess it was a few weeks later that he called and said, can you act? And I said, I don't have any idea. He said, well, didn't you take drama in high school? And I said, yeah, but we did a radio program in Jabberwocky. I have no idea. Anyway, it was a CBS movie of the week. I believe it was CBS, that I was having trouble casting the daughter of Jill Clayburgh and Tom Skerritt. And I looked like I could be their daughter. So, they're having trouble with casting. So they went through the modeling books, and I looked right. And the agent said, Oy, can she act? And then called me and said, can you act? And I said, I don't know. And he said, well, go try. So I tried. And I got a call back. I got another call back. Getting another call back. I think there were 7 callbacks because I had never acted before. So that's very unusual. They don't usually do that many callbacks. But they flew me to Montreal, and I did that movie of the week and thought it was just a fun thing to do the summer between high school and university. And then I got a bunch of calls from other casting directors in Toronto who wanted to see who this nobody was that got this part they were pushing their regulars for. And so they called me in for cold reads, and then I got another movie, this time a lead. So the first job was a large supporting character, and the second job was a lead. And then I got another job that was a lead. I kept saying, I guess I could go to school next semester and I would get my tuition back. And then next semester I'd get another job. So each time I picked my courses and paid my tuition and had to get my tuition back each time. So that went on for a bit.
Well, I was going to ask you actually if acting was ever something you studied in school, because I've interviewed people who have done a lot of screen acting and they took an interest in it and studied drama, and even in university did plays, and even people who have gone on to do writing have done theater stuff. I had a guest who did a theater project, which was noticed actually by PBS, and he became a PBS writer. And we at Nostalgia Talk, by the way, stand by our friends at PBS, even though we are not a political show, but just felt like I had to say that. But no, you just kind of fell right into it. Wow.
Yeah, I like to think I'm a hard worker, and I try to not just, do what they want, but exceed their expectations. And So, be prepared, surprise them with what I can do. And I got some really good advice early on, and I wish I could remember who gave me this advice, but I was doing these good jobs. I was getting these really good parts and very fortunate. And one of the actors I was working with said, be careful who you study with, because whatever you're doing is working. So, something could ruin that. So it wasn't until I think I started in 1986, and in 1993, I was going to go to England. My plan was, it wasn't set up. My plan was to go to England and study at, one of the proper schools. But then I got a job in South Africa, and then I got a miniseries in Calgary. So anyway, that sort of dream got derailed. But when I did move to LA in 1995, I'm very fortunate that I stumbled upon an acting school called Playhouse West, and studied there for 12 years and had great teachers there. Tracy and Mark Pellegrino were my teachers for most of the time, and they're amazing. So that's a Meisner technique school, and I love it. So I was working for about 9 or 10 years before I actually devoted myself to study, because whatever I was doing was working. So I wanted to kind of get set in my way and then introduce new ways. Do you know what I mean? Seemed like a good plan to me.
Of course, the thing that most people know you best for, and I feel like that's one of the reasons a lot of people are listening to this now, is Legend of Zelda. How did you get involved in that?
Just an audition, I'm sure. It was a million years ago, so I can't recall exactly, but I'm sure it was an audition. And
was it like, were you familiar? Was it like, because the video game was relatively new, was it something that you had ever heard of?
No, I hadn't. But I wasn't a video game aficionado, so that wouldn't really tell anything,
So what was it like to work on that show?
Oh, so much fun. The most fun. We laughed so hard. It was always just such a great group of people, and, a really light project. You can have projects where your character is in dire situation, and it's very, very difficult and stressful. And obviously that is not the case when you're doing a cartoon like Zelda, and the people you're working with are so fun. And I remember one time I was supposed to laugh, and I wasn't laughing quite the way the director wanted me to laugh. So the director of that episode was Greg Morton, and he was a funny guy. So I didn't expect this, but he mooned me from the booth. So he's over there in a booth.
Oh my God.
And he flashed me his butt, and I laughed so hard. I think I fell on the floor laughing. So needless to say, it was a fun group of people, and Jonathan Potts and I got along so great, and we still are very good friends. And we just had dinner together a month or 2 months ago.
That's
we went
sweet.
to Keg.
Nice. We have a keg here as well. Now, I'm gonna be honest. When I didn't really play Legend of Zelda when I was a kid. My friend Robbie played a lot of Legend of Zelda when he's a little bit older than I am, but he loved Legend of Zelda, and I kind of knew what it was through him, but I never actually played it. I watched the cartoon from time to time on the DVDs, and plus I also was a watcher. I'm more of a Mario person. And of course, the Legend of Zelda cartoon was a part of the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. And they would show every episode, here are some scenes from the next Legend of Zelda. So that's when I came across the cartoon.
It was so fun. That was a really great time.
My favorite was, so Zelda always, I mean, like in the video games, she was like this big damsel in distress. But in the show, you could kind of tell that she was a little bit sick of it.
Exactly.
Like very tomboyish, I kind of thought.
Exactly. Link was always trying to save her, and she didn't need him to save her.
She'd be like, "Thanks a lot, hero," because
way to go, hero. Is the
because of course his ways of saving her usually made it worse.
Yeah, exactly.
Excuse me, princess.
Exactly. It was so cute. Cute.
I think my favorite that I've seen was Link was turned into a frog, and seeing his reflection as a frog, he just lost all confidence in himself as a hero and as a fighter. And Zelda says to him, "Oh, I've seen worse. I'll always be your friend. You'll always have me." And looking back on that, I'm like, I don't think Link wants you to be friend per se, but that's kind of you.
You know, clearly he didn't want to just be friends, but I wasn't giving him an inch, so.
I don't know if you've heard this, but there's a Legend of Zelda feature film in the works.
Certainly have.
Of
Whenever
course,
I see that come across the news, it's of great interest to me. I'm rooting for them.
and they haven't asked you to play Zelda yet.
No, I think that is an impossibility. Come on, at this age. I mean, we did that in 1989.
Right.
That is a long time ago.
So, you also were a part of the movie Whale Music.
Yes.
Which I actually had never heard of until I started researching for this.
Oh, cool. No, that was an amazing opportunity. And I kept turning it down.
Oh.
Because I had done movies up to that point. And I got a sitcom. So we flew to LA to shoot the pilot, and we weren't shooting the show yet. They kept pushing it, but they kept renewing our contracts. They're like, oh, something else came up, and so they'd have us re-sign and re-sign for different time periods. And I was on vacation when I was auditioning for Whale Music, because I had just shot a mini series in Calgary for 3 months, and then I was driving up to Banff and Lake Louise and Jasper, and I remember getting a call when I got into Jasper saying that I had to go back to Calgary, fly home for a callback for Whale Music. So I'm driving through the night past the ice fields, can't see anything. Felt like it was a total jip because I hadn't seen them. Anyway, flew back, did the callback, ended up being offered the movie. So then I had to decide whether or not to stay with the sitcom and sign the next offer for the sitcom contract or take Whale Music. And I thought, I've done movies before. I've never done a sitcom, so I want to do that. Plus, the other reason was, oh, we skipped something that this is going to pertain to. The second reason was that Maury Chaykin, Paul Gross, and Vic Sarin were involved in Whale Music. So Maury and Paul were starring in it, and Vic Sarin was going to be the director of photography. And a couple of years earlier, I was on another project with Maury Chaykin, Paul Gross, and Vic Sarin called Cold Comfort. And we had done 2 weeks of rehearsal. And at the end of the first day of shooting, I was in the car with the set driver heading home off set, and there was a big car accident, and I got smushed. And I was in the hospital for 3 months.
Oh my God.
And couldn't work for over a year. Had to learn to walk again. Everything, my pelvis was crushed, etc. But the fact that Whale Music was bringing together Maury Chaykin, Paul Gross, Vic Sarin, and me again, I was like, no way. Number one, I want to do the sitcom. Number two, last time I worked with these people, I almost died. So maybe that's not good karma. And then one day, Maury phoned me and made a joke. He said, I'm in a closet in a casting room in LA. And Maury Chaykin is a very large man, rest in peace. And so the joke was that he was hiding in a closet to call me to say, please do this movie. And so I said, okay, Maury, let's do it. So he talked me into it.
Well, first of all, I'm sorry to hear that you were in a terrible accident.
Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you're okay.
Yes.
What was the sitcom? Was it a show that ended up taking off?
Boogie's Diner, and it was with the lovely Joy Tanner, Monica Schneier. It was it was an ensemble piece, and it was really fun. Really silly.
I'm looking this up.
James Marsden. We called him Jimmy back then. James Marsden was in it.
I like him.
Yeah, he's lovely.
Oh, another previous guest, Katie Griffin.
Was she on? She wasn't in the pilot that I was in.
Okay. Her character was named Nikki. I'm seeing Joy Tanner, James Marsden, Jim J. Bullock. We're both looking this up now.
I am.
None of the listeners can see it. We're both now curious that one of my previous guests did this show that we had no idea about.
Okay, so Joy, definitely. Oh, so all the different people in the cast are from the run of the series. Like, I certainly didn't work with Fabio. So, yeah, in the pilot, it was James Marsden, Zach Ward, Robin, Stewart took over from my character, Monica Schneier. Jim J. Bullock. Yeah, I think he was in that first pilot.
That's cool.
I don't even know. I mean, this was all so long ago. I don't know if they even aired the pilot or if they reshot the pilot later. I don't know. I'll have to ask Joy.
Well, going back to Legend of Zelda, actually, as I was researching for this, I noticed that a lot of your work, like on a lot of these shows, has been in live action. But like I said, Legend of Zelda, a lot of people are probably here because of that. Was that your only time ever doing voice acting?
No, it was the only time doing a cartoon.
Okay.
But I did a lot of voice commercials, and I did the voice of a character. There was a series that Christopher Plummer was the lead in, and they had a French girl, a Parisian French girl, if I'm remembering correctly, playing his daughter, and they decided they wanted to Americanize her. So I was kind of known. I knew the guys at the looping studio, at the ADR studio, because of doing the films that I'd done. And I guess I, kind of had a knack for doing it in one take. And so they suggested me for the job to loop this Parisian French girl's voice to make her American. So I did a full series of, gosh, was that called Counter-Strike? Or was that another job I did? Can't recall. But anyway, yeah. So I was in the looping studio a lot. I knew the tech guys pretty well.
And going back to live action stuff, you had a recurring role on the soap opera General Hospital, which my mother's a big watcher of, by the way.
Yep, 2.5 years on General Hospital.
So it was obviously that was another one that was like an audition.
It was great fun. Actually, yeah, I auditioned and I tested for a different character named Summer. And I didn't get Summer, and I was quite disappointed. And then I got a call back, and they said, not a call back as in going in, they called and said they were going to create a character for me. So I didn't know what the character was yet. I just knew I had a job.
That's
so I remember
lucky.
sitting on my deck. This is when I was living in LA. I moved to LA in 95 after Whale Music was sort of big splash here, and I got offers of representation.
And no pun intended, whale splash.
It's very clever. And yes, I went down to LA in 95, and I think, General Hospital was late 02 to early 05. So it would have probably been spring or summer of 02 that I was sitting on my deck overlooking the valley and thinking somebody has just changed my life. Like, I don't know who picked me, and I don't know what the character is yet, but I thought this is going to be a big change, and I was really excited. And then I was super excited because it lasted for like till early 05. And it was just the best.
Because Zelda was so short-lived.
Nice. Exactly. Zelda was one season. I don't remember what it was, 13 episodes or something, which is sort of, I don't know, normal for that sort of thing. I'm not sure, but with General
nowadays,
Hospital,
a typical season, like I just worked on a show for Amazon Prime last summer, and they just started promoting it now. It's called We Were Liars. That's going to have 8 episodes. I mean, that's a crunch down from just 13 episodes.
Well, the world has changed so much, because when I was young, we would do 24 or 22?
Yeah, most sitcoms do 22.
Yeah, it was like you would get picked up, or they'd guarantee the upfront 13, and then you get picked up for the back 9. And so that was a season, and it was, my day, it was the summers were quiet and reruns, and then the fall. And then when we have so many channels now, so many stations, there's no, there's no season, there's no pilot season, there's no reruns, it's all very different now. And the number of episodes.
Yeah, if you want reruns, you have to go to the streaming services.
Much shorter. Yeah. It's a lot shorter. It's a lot different.
But what was that like to do a soap opera?
It was so fun. There was so much dialogue. I thought I'll get used to that. I'll get used to working so fast and learning so much dialogue. And it took me 3 months. I thought it would take 3 weeks to get used to it. And it took more like 3 months. And I would go over to my acting coach's house, Tracy, that I mentioned, Tracy Pellegrino, to help me learn the lines, because there was so much. And we would also tell like other students from the acting school, like, if you want to come and like hang out on set with me to run lines with me to help me learn my lines. At lunchtime, I would run lines with other students from Playhouse. And after we'd wrapped, I'd stay and either run lines with one of the students that came, or with, had a long storyline with Rick Hurst with his character. And we used to stay after work and rehearse it. And then he had a family, so he would, say, I gotta go home for dinner. And then he'd go home, and then we'd get back on the phone and rehearse it more in the evening, because when you came in the morning, you had to be ready to go. You would block it once for camera, but there wasn't rehearsal. There was no time to get it warmed up on set. You had to be warmed up and ready to go. So it was an amazing experience.
Yeah, we didn't do any rehearsal on the show I worked on. Like, it was all just, all right, we're prepping and then going right away. Like, yeah.
It's different times. No, but General Hospital was amazing. I mean, my best friends are Tamara Braun, Natalia Livingston, Cheryl Buchanan, and all of them, those three I met through General Hospital. Cheryl was dating the guy that played my henchman, but the other two were on the show. And we still get together.
Dating the guy that played your henchman. Scandalous.
Yeah. Yeah, we still get together via Zoom and have poetry nights, and we write poetry together.
And you were also on a sitcom that I absolutely love, 2.5 Men.
Ah, yes. That was great fun. That was really, really, really fun. They pulled a joke on John Cryer's character. The episode was about...
When do they not pull jokes on his character?
I know, but this was like not when they were rolling. This was a totally behind the scenes thing. So their mother's husband had left her for another woman, and he left that woman for me. So he dies. And so we arrive at the funeral, and their mother points at this other woman and says, that's the snake that stole my husband. And that woman points at me and says, well, that's the snake. I don't remember exactly what she said, but that was the gist of it, that stole him from me. And so I'm all weepy and everything. And then Charlie Sheen's character is hitting on me. And John's character,
like always.
Right. John Cryer's character is like berating him, saying she's practically your stepmother. And so it's a funeral. There is a coffin. And part of the skit is that John Cryer's son has left his Game Boy in the coffin accidentally. Like, that's on camera, part of the show.
I do remember this one.
Remember this, right?
Yeah.
So then, as it's written, John Cryer's character has to come in, creep back in, going, oh, sorry, in front of everyone, open the casket lid a little bit and feel around to find the Game Boy and pull it out. Because the Game Boy's going off at this time, and you can hear the song and stuff like that. And so in between takes, when John Cryer is not on set, because he's got to come in through closed doors, so he can't see the set, and they had a crew member climb into the coffin. So when he opens it a crack and sticks his hand in to get the Game Boy, somebody grabs his arm. So he screams and runs away, and it was really funny. Very, very funny.
I'm going to have to watch that episode and be like, oh, I know a little behind the scenes funny secret from this.
Yes. So that, I believe that wasn't part of what was actually like, edited into the final product, because that was just an inside joke for the crew.
And the X-Files, you were on that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really fun.
And that's an intense, I've only watched a little bit of it, but that's a little bit more intense.
So intense, but they kept it so light in between takes. Like, David Duchovny was joking around, teasing me, like making me laugh right before we started, saying, because my cat was... My cat in LA was sick, and I just had surgery on my cat. And so I was speaking with the other co-star about how my cat was doing, and David Duchovny comes up. And I'd already been speaking to him about my ex-husband, my husband at the time, when I was doing X-Files, was a special effects guy. He did animatronics and robotics for like 2.5 Men and Hellboy and stuff like that. And so David Duchovny comes up and makes some joke about my husband turning the cat into an animatronics. And he says this as they're saying, quiet on set, rolling, action. And I'm looking at him, like, this is an appalling joke that he had just made. And I'm looking at him with my jaw dropped wide open. And then I have to get into character immediately. So he was always goofing around and keeping it very light.
I mean, for a serious show, I mean, we talk about pranks. Wow.
Yeah.
And you also were involved in a lot of Lifetime movies.
Yes.
A little too many to list here.
I know. Well, what happened was one of the producers of the Lifetime movies that I was involved in, his name was Pierre David. And I had done a movie before the Lifetime movies called Pin. We shot it in Montreal, and Pierre was one of the producers of Pin. And Pin was a psychological thriller starring David Hewlett and me, and directed by Sandy Stern. And it was a really great experience. And so Pierre, being the producer on that one, when he started making the Lifetime movies, I was kind of brought into his stable. So I would very often do the lead in the movie, and sometimes I'd be brought up to do the best friend. And sometimes he'd even bring me in to do a cameo. And on two of the films specifically, I remember one time I played, because we were friends, it had gone beyond just being colleagues. And I played a victim of a murder in a flashback, and she's pushed down the stairs. So all I do is stand at the top of the stairs, and the stunt girl comes in and falls down the stairs. And then they carry me dead into a trunk, put me in the trunk of a car. And that's all I did on that movie. And another time, it was actually when my ex-husband...
They could have had you in the coffin then for 2.5 Men.
I know. My husband and I broke up, and Pierre found out that we broke up, and he flew me up to play a bartender on the show. On this movie, he said, you need to be around people who love you.
Aww.
And he flew me all the way from LA to Ottawa just to be on set for one scene and to hang out with him and the crew that were my buddies. Like, he is just a lovely man. So, yeah, lots of movies with very telling titles, like the Sisters Killer and the
yeah, they Dead at 17, like they all I mean, I was saying the X-Files was intense just by how it looks, but the names seem more intense than wow.
I think I was always a psycho killer in those movies. Unless I was the best friend, like I said, sometimes you're just a supportive friend. But does that happen a lot with you, where it's just like a mutual connection and it's like, hey, you should try this? I mean, I know you audition, obviously, but do you often get recommended? But yeah, especially when I moved to LA, because Canadians, I don't know if it's changed now, because I've kind of been in the industry for so long. I don't know what it's like when people are just getting into it, but I had done a bunch of leads, and then you move away, and then they value you because you've left and you're in LA. So I did get a bunch of movies that I would just get sent and say, read it. Will you do it? And I remember saying from time to time, well, if I don't have to do the nudity, I'll do it. And they'd say, fine. They'd take out the nudity and I'd do the movie. So I remember that happening.
Well, that's nice that they were willing to cooperate with you.
Exactly.
It doesn't really happen a lot.
I don't know. I remember there was one movie where I was supposed to play an action hero, and I had injured my shoulder. And so I said, I can't do it. And they kept saying, we'll wait for you. We'll wait for you. And I'm like, I don't know how long. And then I've got this other commitment for this other project. So it just, I don't know. There were some in my younger days, now I'm reading for the mom and sometimes the grandma. So in my younger days, it was very nice to be offered leads.
God, how weird does that feel to be playing a grandma?
Great. I mean, maybe my attitude is just because of the car accident. It was very serious. It wasn't minor. Like they were preparing my family for me not to make it. And I don't know if that's changed my attitude or not, because I think I was extremely optimistic before that. But I don't worry about getting older. I mean, think about it. The only alternative is you're dead. You're either not aging or you're here aging. So just embrace it. I don't even feel like I embrace it. It's just, I'm lucky to be here. So great. So do the auditions and do the jobs when they pick you. And when they don't, the rest of the time, I'm writing projects, I'm producing projects. I'm just always having fun doing what I want to do.
That's awesome. So to wrap it up, I had a previous guest back in November named Rachel Kimsey, who, like you, has been on soap operas, has done voiceover, has had parts in movies. and just by coincidence was also involved in a motorcycle accident, but not a car accident. She and I were talking about various celebrities that she's come across, and some of those celebrities that she's been in various stuff. She still sees it like auditions. Like she did a movie with Steven Tobolowsky. I don't know if I said that actor's name correctly, but she recognized him and she's like, "Oh my God, I love you," in so many things. And I think she got to work with him again later. So to wrap it up, do you have any celebrity stories from your experiences that you'd like to share? I mean, I know you just mentioned working with Charlie Sheen and John Cryer.
The first thing that's coming to mind, it's not like an acting celebrity, but when I was doing Total Recall 2070, we were taken to the Monte Carlo Television Festival. So we were flown to Nice, put everyone into a room for cocktails, and they decided later where everyone was sitting. So they were looking to see who they were going to put with Prince Albert of Monaco at his table. And so they picked me. And so I got to sit with, my producers and my cast members with Prince Albert. And John Favreau was at our table, and Penelope and Miller. And so we all just, had a great time at this big fancy dinner. And then the prince took us out dancing afterwards. And we all just, hanging out with these famous people in this incredibly exotic place was quite fun.
So that's all I've got here. Is there anything you want to say to wrap up?
I don't know. Can I think of, is that story not exciting because we don't really, maybe people don't know who the prince is, but let's see. It's so weird when people say, who are the famous people that you've met or worked with? And I don't remember, except of course, a couple stories that I already told, but.
That's okay.
I just remember, when I was doing 2.5 Men, that it was a funny moment because Charlie Sheen had IMDb'd me, and he kind of gave John Cryer a hard time because John hadn't remembered working with me before because I had done another job with John Cryer, just where I was a guest on the sitcom. Like, you can't expect him to remember all the guest stars,
Yeah, that's the crazy thing. I mean, they're not getting paid to remember who came on.
Exactly.
They're getting paid to work.
It's no big deal, but it was cute because then it sort of revealed to me that Charlie Sheen had looked me up, which was flattering. But of course he's, got quite a reputation. He was a perfect gentleman with me. They both were. Everyone was absolutely lovely. But I remember.
Well, that's good to know, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely perfect gentlemen, both of them. But I remember being flattered that he looked me up and then was teasing John for not remembering that he'd already worked with me. But that was just fun.
Well, Cynthia, thank you very much for coming on Nostalgia Talk.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
And to everyone listening, see you next time. Peace out.